Greetings and bienvenue, Midnight Crew. Thank you for returning to this broadcast, and welcome to new viewers joining us for the first time. If you like a video, then feel free to subscribe.
Spooky stories. Innawoods. I was hunting, hear crunching behind me, look back thinking it's a deer. Its figure is clearly not a deer. Impending sense of doom. Fire my gun at the figure and it drops. I ran back to my truck and drove off. Still think about it every day.
Not particularly is it very spooky, but I have no idea of what sort of animal it could have been. Be me. Be Scoutmaster for kids between the ages of 8 and 10. Be away on camp with all our age groups. One of the children decided to throw a tantrum and ran away upon being told that he needs to wash his eating utensils. He's not to be found within the camp area. Decide to send maybe 20 adults into the woods with walkie-talkies to look for him. Head into the woods due northwest with another dude. Walk through the forest and over old stone walls for maybe an hour hollering this idiot child's name. Start following an old logging road since it has good elevation, which we reason is going to carry our voices better and help us see him. Follow it for half an hour or so, hollering all the while, until something starts responding to our shouting. Sounds like an animal mimicking our voices, tone and everything. It comes from away from the camp, so it could hardly have been another impromptu search party messing with us. Don't think it was our own echo either, since it only responded some of the time. At this point, the camp organizers call us on the walkie-talkie and tell us to head back and get on with the rest of the day. I found the child hiding behind a tree some time later, but a shrinkage of 1 to some 200 participants would still have been acceptable. Again, probably an animal, but I have no idea of what kind.
Not super Innawoods, but the only spooky thing that ever happened to me at uni. Walking home from late evening class, dark as F school is in a very pretty wooden area in the mountains, so has several nature trails that connect parts of campus and apartments, etc. Take a shortcut through a nice wooded path with some small, dim yellow street lamps. Talking to my buddy on the phone as I'm walking. Walk directly under the lamp and it goes out. Don't think much, funny coincidence. Continue walking and chatting. Walk under the next lamp. It goes out, leaving the path behind me pitch black. Stop talking mid-sentence and look nervously at the next lamp ahead. Think to myself, if that lamp goes out, I'm going to up and sprint to the end of the trail and out to the street nearby. Pass under the lamp. Stays on just fine. Let out a huge sigh of relief. Take the long way home from night class on the main road from now on. I lied. I forgot more spooky stuff. Working night security at a small office complex. 2 3-story buildings and a parking lot. This was right after the plague, so 99% of employees were working from home. The primary building with our security desk was always fine. Building B was something else. Despite having fancy doors that stay closed and no foot traffic in months, there was always noises. The lobby had a high ceiling and the second-floor hallway opened up to the lobby. With tile floors and walls, it essentially made a huge echo chamber. Standing in the lobby at 2 a.m., I'd constantly hear footsteps, doors slam, rattle noises, voices, and all sorts of noises. Only armed with a large pocket knife and an old-ass, totally not a metal baton flashlight. The only saving grace was I always had a partner back in the other building, so I wasn't completely alone. Otherwise, I'd probably lose it. Several people had died at that office. One construction worker got creamed by a car because the original parking lot was literally touching a major highway. Now it backs off a bit. Another dozen died over the years, mostly from being fat and unhealthy though. Very glad I wasn't one of them. Also, luckily, there was a fire station within spitting distance. Other than the haunted building, there were also packs of coyotes that would wander through and do murder howls. Swear I even saw one walk funny and almost go bipedal. Think it was just a trick of the light reflecting on the window, but still had me staring, holding my breath. Very glad I'm not working nights anymore. Last one, not as spooky, but definitely scared me. Working night security on weekends. Park a personal car at an office under construction and watch the lot for 12 hours. Pizza and shit posting all night. Major highway on one side of the lot. Large stretch of desert to the other. Car pulls in, not too weird. Lots of people stop by from the highway to stretch their legs. A little white beater car pulls in and stops. Chubby dude, maybe in his 30s, gets out. Immediately starts running down the lot. But the way he's running is whack. high-stepping like he's joking around, but he's screaming gibberish, even pumping his arms up and down, super animated. Runs out of the lot, turns and goes down the road, but perfectly follows the sidewalk despite dirt paths being faster. Runs down the road and out of sight, still doing the crazy run and yelling to himself. Serious WTF face. Approach the car and it's almost empty. Pack of water bottles, old school road map, little bit of food wrappers and sweater, I think. Otherwise clean. Go back to the car and call it in. Helpline basically says I don't give AF and keep an eye on it. Dude walks back an hour later and just casually gets into his car and drives off. People really are off their meds these days.
Be me. Late summer 2021. Got a nice LARP kit together due to 2020. 2 stamp gun setup for night vision. L3 unfilmed PVS-14 and a higher end one at that. Go camping in the Gemmas Mountains of New Mexico. Incredibly beautiful spot and not many other people around. Close to one of Los Alamos National Labs tech areas, this one has telescopes and I think that was an early attempt at a cosmic gamma ray detector. Inside it's a killer place to stalk or LARP. Site is still somewhat active, nobody is there but there are very obvious night surveillance cameras with powerful infrared lights. Not a problem, just stick to the trees. There's a couple cabins and a garage up there too, so I decided to check those out, no infrared lights. Suddenly there's a very bright light coming from further back in the woods. But my non-night vision eye can't see it, meaning this light is infrared. The light is moving very rapidly through thick woods and underbrush, not at all how a human moves. Can't make out what the light is attached to though, lots of trees in the way. Oh, by the way, it's completely silent too. Now I'm getting spooked as hell. One of the cabin doors is damaged like someone already broke in. Don't want to go in but really don't want to be out with whatever that light is. There I am, trespassing on Department of Energy property with night vision and National Firearms Act items with a chest rig with some kind of invisible UFO outside and possibly even someone still inside the cabin. Watch through the window. The light zooms through the woods a couple times more, then it either fades or goes so deep in the woods I get to see it. Hold perfectly still for 10 to 15 minutes. Don't hear or see anything so I leave. Head straight back to the car which was fortunately in the opposite direction from where the light was. Get back to camp and end up spending the whole night in the Forerunner, geared up, not sleeping a wink. I have a top secret clearance and I have no clue what I saw.
The year is 2006, Anno Domini, be me. Enjoying some early fall hunting on an island in the eastern approach to Georgian Bay. It had been homesteaded by a WW1 vet back in the 1920s, but he and his family abandoned it because its rocky terrain made the soil impossible to farm. Old overgrown walls still out in the deep bush. Day 1. I decide to go for grouse, take an old bolt-action 22 for a long hike along the high ridges. Manage to walk directly into a Massasauga rattlesnake patch. Hear the rattle and freeze cold with my right foot about a foot off the ground. Look down and realize I was about to step directly on a rattlesnake. Yikes. Look around and realize there are obviously way more of them around me. They must be mating somewhere nearby. Very, very carefully retrace my steps and go back to the cabin and take the rest of the day off. The grouse won. Day 2. Grab my Mossberg 20GA and decide to hike the island lengthwise and see what is hiding out there. Start on the eastern side, drag my boat up on the beach and begin to cut through the swamps. By noon I am tired and decide to just sit on a little hillock surrounded by deep swamp and see what's happening around me. Heard a noise. Before I have a chance to shoulder my gun, there is a flash of white and a pretty doe disappears back into the trees. Too bad. Maybe tomorrow. Find cottages I was trekking towards and people I know on the shoreline waiting for me. Awesome. Hitch a ride back to my own boat and call it a day. Day 3. Ruins Day. Same gear as yesterday, but brought my uncle's dog with me. Make a beeline to where the homestead should be, cross the ruins and find some old stonework. It's always sad to stand beside an abandoned dream. No deer, no grouse, but at least there are no bugs. Meander back to the rocky area and look for a meadow to take a nap in. Find an idyllic patch of grass. Figure a bunny may dart across, so I tie up the dog beside me and just lay down to take a nap. I doze off and some time passes. Suddenly I am startled awake by a very large crashing sound, at least a km or more away. Must be a moose. Then I hear it again, still very far away coming from the deep swamp. The dog doesn't care, so I figure I will just sit there for another bit and then head back to my boat. Crash. Same noise again, but slightly closer. This repeats itself for almost 45 minutes. Each time it comes slightly closer. which is pretty typical of a big animal, so I just stack some slugs and wait to see what pops out of the bush. At this point, it is getting close to 3 p.m., which means the intensity of the day has begun to fade. The crashing continues, and I can hear breathing as well now. Very, very deep breathing, like hundreds of liters of air are being moved, then sporadic crying like a wounded rabbit. Not only that, the noise has continued in a straight line right towards me, which is not typical of a large animal because the dog has begun to whine. It just keeps on getting closer and closer. Imagine the crunching noise made by backing a truck into someone's hedge, and then imagine having that same intensity of sound combined with very deep breathing, fine, pitched whimpering, and coming almost straight at you in the bush for almost an hour. I definitely wasn't dozing anymore. Suddenly, it is in the bushes across the meadow, clearing over 30 meters away from me. The noise, the breathing, the crying, the animals, everything just stops. Puppy is cowering behind me as I stand there laser-focused on those bushes. It is silent. It feels like a time warp is happening around the meadow. Everything is just so quiet all of a sudden. I break the silence with hello. Nothing. Absolutely nothing. I can feel something tremendously powerful standing there and looking at me. For $1 million, I wouldn't have turned my back on it. I continue, "It's okay, man. I'm just hunting rabbits. You do your thing and I'm leaving anyway." Absolutely nothing is moving. It's like the wind has forgotten to blow. The silence is more unnerving than anything. Puppy is lying there with eyes glazed from fear. I unsheath my belt knife and put it on the ground beside me. I know it sounds so ridiculous since I am holding a loaded shotgun, but somehow the look of the blade is reassuring, and moving breaks the silence. Still no sounds from across the meadow. At this point, the standoff has lasted at least 10 minutes. Whatever is there can't leave in silence, and I absolutely refuse to go into the bush since my visibility would drop to feet and inches. I began to sing Auld Lang Syne and Amazing Grace. I look down at the puppy, and he no longer looks like he expects an immediate and untimely death. Well, that is a good sign. I resheath my knife, and then give the puppy a tug to come with me. He won't budge an inch. Shouldering my shotgun, I begin the gingerly advance across the meadow. I need to figure out what was there, and I need to do it before I run out of light to get back to my boat. The world is still silent. As I approach the bushes, I can see that nothing is there. They are very clearly empty. WTF is going on. Nothing that large could have disappeared silently. I see some leaves and twigs which can be snapped. Above my shoulder height and much wider. WTF. I need to see tracks. Where are the tracks? My mystery moose would have left tracks in the soft ground. Where are the tracks? Well, there is one. Something. It is an oblong impression about the length of my boot, but soft on the edges and with an arch on each side. No claws. WTF am I looking at? Find another track. Same size and shape. Parallel to the first, but much wider apart than my hips. Both point directly at where I was standing. WTF, WTF, WTF. Turn around and look for more. Find a single track almost an entire leap away. Soft and oblong with double arches. No other sign is present. It managed to hide behind twigs which barely cast shadows and stared at me in silence. Leave and never go back.
Be me on a boat at 14, hanging out with family watching fireworks on Douglas Dam Lake in Tennessee. We dropped the anchor just off the shoreline in front of this old abandoned house. While watching fireworks, I see a man standing in the upstairs window. Must be a homeless guy. Wait, that guy has no face. Just perfectly smooth, vaguely pinkish white skin. No indents around where his eyes or mouth would be if he was wearing a mask and you could see his hair so it wasn't a morph suit. Tell my cousin I see a guy who looks like he has no face in the window. He says he sees it too. Okay, a little weird. Look back, he's in the next window. Tell my aunt. She looks over and doesn't see him. We tell the second cousin about it and he looks over and we all see it again, aunt included. This time he's in the doorway. Second cousin's wife sees it this time. We talk about how weird it is. We look back and he's at the edge of the water. He just walks into the water and disappears under it. Second cousin immediately turns the boat back on, retrieves the anchor, and we head back to the campsite on the other side of the river. Go to bed. I woke up the next day thinking it was a weird dream. Bring it up and everyone confirms it happened. Second cousin's daughter, 20, tells a story about how one time she and some people went into the house and found newspapers about local murders and obituaries glued to the walls. Tried to shake it off. Years later bring it up, again thinking it must be a false memory. Everyone I bring it up to confirms there was a man with no face, and they all get visibly nervous and scared to remember it. I promise you all it wasn't a mask. The man didn't have a face, and he just stared at us, only moving great distances in the milliseconds we're all not looking. I have to live my life now knowing at least one monster is real, and it may not be alone.
Forgot this threat existed, thanks for the you. Drive up to my family's hunting property near Ralph in the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. Spend the first few days of the season stalking around looking for a good spot, because I don't like using my family's blind. See nothing worth shooting, small deer, yotes, and a boar. Finally see a buck worth shooting on day 6. Very excited, but I don't want to mess up my shot, using a Model 94 with irons. Buck walks into an awkward position so I can't get a clean shot on him. Notice I can get a good shot if I go around a bunch of brush about 150 meters from him. Creep as silently as I can through the brush. Notice a brownish clump through the brush in the direction I need to go, only 10 feet away from me. Freeze and scrutinize the object. Notice it's furry. I crept up on a cinnamon black bear. Start backing away slowly, keeping my eye glued to the shape. Have Model 94 up just in case. Accidentally step on a dead pine branch. The crunching sound is deafening in the silence. Shape's head whips around, pick related. Instead of the bear muzzle, I was expecting it's a human-like face with its eyes wide in surprise. We stare at each other for a second. Thing makes a whooping sound and rushes off through the brush away from me. I tactically rush off in the opposite direction. Don't stop until I make it to the log cut where the deer stand is. As I said, not that interesting. I've been hunting there for a few years after I saw it, and I've never seen or heard anything unusual. I'm half convinced it was just a black bear and my mind was playing tricks on me.
Have you guys ever been in dead pine? The patches of woods and forests that are just dead fire trees that have fallen over yet. It's the only time I spend in the woods where I feel completely on edge from the moment I step into it to the moment I leave. Everything in these places is dead. The fallen pine needles smother the ground so there are no shrubs or undergrowth. The trees are dead, so no birds nest in them, and no animals on the ground because there is nothing there to eat. You'd think that with all the needles gone, it'd be quite light, but these places are dark. Real dark. The pine before they died all clumped together tightly, and the skeletons of their branches have become interwoven. Now there's no needles to stop that happening. It's so thick that you can only hear the branches rustling if there's a storm outside. Which leads on to the worst part. The silence. The blanket of needles muffles all sounds, so you hear nothing. No birds. No animals. No wind. Neither your own footsteps or those who are walking with you. Nothing. And any of you who spend a lot of time in the woods and forest will understand just how terrifying that is. Because it's never quiet, unless there is something nearby which has scared everything else off. So there you are, moving through a dead land with no sound, no breeze, and everything looks the same. Everything is brown and lifeless. The paths are hard to follow, and you have to make a good mental note about the path you took because landmarks are few in such places. And the entire time your instincts are telling you that you are in terrible danger and you need to get out of there right now. Then, you hear a twig snap or a thump of something falling off a tree. You look around, but there's nothing to see. So you press forward, and did you turn left or right at the last junction? Great. Well, you could always ignore the path and push through the deep blanket of old needles. It's not like you'll just disappear, right?
This one is actually pretty spooky. Sorry for the length. Be me. 10 years old, give or take. The family rents a cabin in the middle of nowhere, Arkansas during winter. Literally nothing around us for miles. Note left on the mantel, either from owner or previous tenant. Gather all the firewood before dusk. Do not go outside. Avoid the hall. I remember being old enough to be able to read the note and being confused by the spelling. Ask parents WTF it meant. I was a scaredy pants and thought it was talking about some monster called the Haulle or something. Dad laughs and says something. Someone just wrote a reminder to gather firewood to avoid any late-night hauls. Dusk sets in, starts drizzling. Loud AF because the cabin has a tin roof. It gets dark pretty soon. We pack up for bed. It's just one giant room, so we're all sleeping together. None of us can sleep because of the loud-ass rain on the roof. I'm still a bit scared from my idea of some monster. Suddenly, a yellow flashlight beam streaks across the window. No curtains or blinds or anything, just a giant exposed window. Unmistakably a flashlight of some sort. Mom and Dad immediately shoot up straight in their beds. Look out the window. Dude is just standing on the forest line, probably 150-ish feet away from the cabin. Unmistakably a human figure. It's raining hard, but this silhouette is just standing there holding what looks like one of those big-ass D-cell battery flashlights. Silhouette walks backwards into the woods. Dad grabs Beretta from his bag and opens the door. "Holy shit," he says very loudly. "We are out of here." He corralled us to the car, tells us to run. He guns it out of there. We ended up driving like 30 miles into the nearest town and staying at a Best Western. He said he saw muddy footprints around the concrete porch and leading up to the main window side door.
1998. Fly fishing one bright day on a tributary of the Skeena River in British Columbia. Relatively quiet, normal forest sounds. Standing in water up to my crotch, lost in thought. See a deer come out of the forest and wander down to the river for a drink about 20 meters downstream. Admiring the glory of nature. Suddenly a rock the size of a lunchbox comes sailing out of the forest on the opposite side of the river, striking a deer in the head. Deer drop dead or stunned. An instant later an 8 feet tall humanoid covered in long dark brown hair darts out of the forest with minimal noise, crosses the river in 3 or 4 strides, grabs the deer, and runs back the way it came. The brain is just frozen trying to comprehend what was just witnessed. Oh my God. Panic. Get to shore, drop rod, struggle up riverbank. Pursuit feeling overwhelming. Run. 100 meters to the road where the truck is parked. Trying to run with waders on. Made it, at last. Drive off, never go back for the gear left behind. Told a friend about it and he drove to the location after work about 10 p.m. to recover the gear. It's pitch dark out and he's unafraid of the forest at night. Said he parked his truck on the side of the road and started walking towards the trail and forest. Said he stopped and listened and said he could hear something stomping around in the distance. Thought better of what he was about to do and returned to town and joined buddies at the Legion. Laughs and joshing fade as the beer began to flow, stories of, "I heard this happen," and so saw this. Needless to say, fishing days were over after that.
Go camping with buddy. Hike out about 8 miles to the halfway point in the trail. Pull out bottle of Knob Creek buddy has Canadian Mist. Proceed to eat and get shit-faced. I go to the tent, and my buddy goes to the hammock. I'm suddenly awakened to the feeling of someone grabbing my legs and pulling me towards the woods. Wake up throwing punches at some unseen nightmare, thrashing so violently it wakes my buddy up 20 feet away. WTF was that dream? The next morning my buddy told me he was having the most amazing dream. There were all kinds of animals walking around him made of the northern lights. Then a beautiful woman appeared and climbed into his hammock with him, just about to sexy time. He gets suddenly awoken by my violent thrashing. Buddy was so enamored with the memory of the dream he looked into it. He tells me about the deer woman later. And that's how I drunkenly fist-fought the deer woman and saved my buddy's mortal soul at the same time. Crazy part is the feeling of being drunk was so strong I literally woke up swinging and can't remember what I dreamed about.
Not really /K/, but I wanted to give my experience. Be me. Young kid in mid-2010s. Went on a school camping trip for a couple days to some campground in California. First day wasn't too bad. Second day we go up a mountain where there's a trail that goes down trail, has a tree encompassing it like a tunnel. Counselors ask who wants to go first. Feelbrave.gif. Go alone walking down. Sun was starting to set, so it had this pinkish yellow sky to it, so maybe 7 p.m. Keep walking, feeling brave and unafraid. I attribute this to autism, but the school never diagnosed me with it at the time, so I never knew until middle school. Look back at the trail behind me. See a tall, hairless white figure on all four moving towards me slowly. Don't feel scared, just confused. No copper or metallic smell. By this time it's night and I can barely see my surroundings, but this thing has glow to it. Not glowing as like a spook, but more like the dark shadows don't affect it. The distance was around half a football field, I think. Keep walking at a faster pace. Make it down. See a girl that went after I walked first. Ask here if C saw it as well, but she didn't, even though she would have seen it in front of her more clearly than I would have. Decide not to press the issue. Just stayed by the lamp post and cabins until everyone made it. Rest of the trip was nice, but that memory always stayed with me. Didn't know what 4chan was back, as I was mostly on drawing on Flipnote Studio Hatena with my Nintendo DSi, and not so much on the internet other than YouTube. Then otherwise I would have told my story on /k/ or /x/. When I get back from work, I can draw a couple pics and maybe look for my photo album they gave to me when school was over and look through to see what campground this was or year. Might not work today, so I had time to find a photo album. It's Westminster Woods Camp, about an hour where I live now. Happened in 2013. Pic related, I'm to the far right.
Not much action, but I don't have much. Middle school. A friend comes over. Go Innawoods with .22 we have. Shooting random stuff in the creek from the top of the hill. Hill is grass, so no trees on downslope. After shooting for a while, just sit back and hang out with snacks. Hear movement behind us in trees at top of hill. Leaves crunching, can't tell if an animal or man. We both look at each other, then look back out to listen. It stops for a minute. Seems like it changes course and is coming right at us at a slow pace. After a few seconds I yell, "Who goes there?" The noise stops for a bit. Suddenly movement sounds pick up the pace coming at us. Sounds too big to be a dog or deer. We pick up our gear and sprint back to my house, never stopping until we're inside. Could have been anything, I was young. Another. Older, by myself. Same area as last story to shoot. Saw a storm on the radar in the next county over, but figured I could get an hour in before it reached me. Get to spot and set up targets in the creek. I get to the top of the hill and shoot off a few rounds. Stop and see the storm on the horizon. It's super dark and ominous, definitely tornado weather. Stand there for a few minutes and just admire it. There is small lake a bit down the way and I see the water ripple as wind goes over it. Neat. Suddenly I'm hit with the strong force of the wind. Damn, that was kinda intense, haha. Black clouds are now over my head with very quick gray clouds below moving around. The sun disappears and it's dark. I kid you not, I see those lower gray clouds circle and a wisp of a tornado starting past the creek above the adjacent hill. I stare in awe for exactly 1 second before my flight instincts kick in. Leave my small bag, water, snacks, and some ammo, and just start running back home, moist nugget in hands. As I leave the open hill into the woods, it's even darker to where my sight doesn't adjust for like 20 seconds. Tornado siren going off in the far distance, but can barely hear it over the wind and trees blowing. Partially blind and deaf, I just sprint all the way back home. Wind if going crazy and plants are being thrown everywhere. Get inside and tell my family what I saw. They look at me like I'm overreacting and reluctantly go into the basement after I begged them. It was like a blowout from a stalker, although I was not thinking about that at the time. That tornado wisp scared me. It was like all of a sudden some lighter colored cloud formed to make a small downward spiral tower in an instant that looked to almost touch the tops of the trees.
Septic tanks have to be pumped before any home is sold in my county. Get a job excavating a tank on a property way in the middle of nowhere. Nobody's supposed to be on site. The home has been vacant for years, and the owner lives on the other side of the country. Find the address. The rusty old gate is wide open at the start of the driveway. The driveway is completely overgrown with brush and even some trees. Cool means no tweakers squatting here probably. Unload the excavator. Clear a path to drive to the house a couple 100 feet from the road, and can barely see it because the entire yard is so overgrown. Turn around and head back to load up and drive my truck down. Okay, that's weird. My passenger door is open, I definitely left it closed and there's no one with me. It was unlocked because why would I lock it? I'm at least 1,000 yards from the nearest human being. Look around, there's no one here. It's pretty much just tall grass nobody has mowed ever. No signs that someone walked up to this side of the truck. It'd be pretty obvious if they were wading through waist-high grass. Whatever. Maybe I left it open. Even though it's obvious from the grass, I didn't close it. Drive down to the house, unload again, lock doors this time. Start digging up the tank. The whole time I feel like I'm being watched from the house. A couple times I think I catch movement in the windows, but when I look there's nothing there. I'm just creeped out because of that thing with my truck's door. It's fine. Finished digging up the tank. It's from the 60s, cracked on the floor and walls, totally ruined. Gonna need replacing. Try to call the homeowner. Phone says I have cell service. Call just fails. Give up after 3 times. All right, screw it. I'll call him back at my shop. Load up to leave. The gate is locked. Things are not okay anymore. I'm not having a good time. Draw a pistol. Cover the direction of the house while I walk back to my excavator. Rip the gate right off the fence, pistol in hand the whole time. GTFO. Same as before, get a job to excavate a septic tank. Google Maps tells me to go down this unnamed dirt road. Pulling down the road, and it's clear people drive down here. It's not overgrown, and there's tire tracks in the dirt. Something just feels off, though. Start getting further along, and there's all sorts of trash dumped on the side of the road. Mattresses, insulation, rolled up carpet. We're talking like 20 houses worth of carpet all bundled up and dumped here right alongside the road. Pretty sure there's not someone at the end of this road that has an actual job to pay for things. Get to the end of the road. 3 tiny abandoned houses all tucked up next to each other, doors wide open, and some ecology blocks blocking the road. Oh, there's the house I'm supposed to be at right past the blocks. On a hill. Looks like this road used to connect. Now it sure doesn't. Notice the houses here aren't empty. They're packed so full of junk I can see it in the windows, like you would be walking on at least 4 or 5 feet of just stuff. Same right past the doorways. 3 entire buildings filled near floor to ceiling, but there's new-looking cable hookups on each one and power lines running to each house. Not disconnected. People live here. Managed to get my trailer turned around to leave. A ratty truck with a bed full of more carpet pulls up, blocking my way out. 2 obvious tweakers get out and start running up to my truck. Nah, I don't know or care what this is. I'm out. Floor it out of there through the blackberry bushes growing on the side of the road till I get past their truck. Get to the right house. Look back at the tweaker colony and see it clearly from here. Truck is gone. There's a spotless brand new black Audi sitting there. Just sitting there the whole time I do my job. Leaves the same time I do. Some kind of meth lab bullshit, I guess.
I hope that you enjoyed tonight's broadcast. If you enjoyed tonight's story, then please subscribe to the channel as more green texts will appear daily. A new broadcast will appear when the clock strikes midnight Central Time.
Remember to check out the Odyssey page in the description for a second archive of the channel's videos.
There's also a Rumble archive as a backup.